is going great so far. I'm gonna adjust this tripod just a little bit, and then we will be off to the races. So for this live Q&A, feel free to ask any questions that you would like to ask, any fitness related questions, food related questions. I know we're getting ready to go into the summer, so figured we would talk a little bit about shredding if you guys want to talk about that. Otherwise, it's an open book. I am a little bit about what's going on with me. So I'm getting ready for the New York Pro, and that is May 21st. It's up in Teaneck, New Jersey. It's Bev's Gym's show, and it will be my first contest of the season. So I've been working really hard at dieting down and prepping since about, I would say about February, maybe beginning of March. So it's been a good while of dieting, and pretty excited to step on stage again. I've actually changed a couple of things in my routine and changed the front pose up quite a bit, and we'll be changing the hair just a little bit. So very excited. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. And switch my phone to landscape, so I have to remember that the camera's over here. I think the last live I did, I was looking over here. And I'll also see if I can pull it up about my computer here too. So I'll see if I can read the comments as we go. So always fun. Okay, I see the comments here. Hello, SDD. So nice to see you guys. Yeah, so we can talk about training, dieting. Hello, Sarah Ann. Hi, Gabrielle. I hope you have a good day too. And yeah, whatever questions you might have, if there are videos that you would like to see. I just started writing some ideas about doing a kind of a summer shred series. Can you please show the gym outfit that you're wearing now? Hello, Clee. Hello, Yasmina. Oh, well, thank you so much. Hi, Megan. Hey, Karen. Hi, Cole. Hi, Ellie. Ellie asks, what is the science to bulking? Does it help to build more muscle? Yes, of course. So bulking is going to help you build more muscle. Personally, to me, I don't think a woman should have to go into what's called a dirty bulk, and that is eating everything in sight in an attempt to gain muscle. All of the research points to being in a slight caloric surplus to gain muscle. So whatever your maintenance calories are now, if you increase that just a teeny bit, for us ladies, it's about 100 calories to about 300 calories daily on average. This is going to give you the materials that you need in order to build that muscle. Now, when we look at macronutrients for building muscle, really important that you look at your carbs, increasing your carbs more, and also make sure your protein intake is good. Keep in mind that carbs are what they call protein sparing. So if you increase your carbs, this is going to help prevent you from breaking down muscle. And also it's going to lessen the need for overall protein intake. So when you're in a caloric surplus, making sure that those excess calories are coming primarily from your carbohydrates and a little bit from protein too. You do not want to eat an excess of dietary fats when you're in a caloric surplus, because dietary fats are so easily stored as body fat. So again, making sure that that excess is in the form of your carbs and in proteins. Pretty straightforward, and that is the science behind bulking, and that is what I would consider more of a clean or a lean bulk. This is going to maximize your muscle gain while minimizing your fat gain, because as we all know, if we have tried to put on muscle in the past, that whenever you put on excess, or whenever you gain muscle, if you put on excess fat, in order to reveal that muscle, you're going to have to pull that fat back off, which means you're going to have to go into a diet or a caloric deficit. So if we can limit the amount of fat that we put on, that means we don't have to diet as hard for as long. So let me know if that makes sense. Okay, so we're gonna go back up. Kevin says, love the Wonder Woman costume. Thank you. Hello, Mara. Hi, Michelle. Monica asks, what are your thoughts on intermittent fasting and training while fasting? Okay, so this is going to depend on your goals. This is going to depend on you personally. I do follow what's called time restricted feeding. Check out Dr. Rhonda Patrick, Dr. Sachin Panda. So Dr. Sachin Panda is the one who actually came up with time restricted feeding. This is just limiting your eating window to between 8 to 12 hours. So typically I fall in the category of probably 10 to 12 hour eating window. And I like this because I'm eating according to my circadian rhythm. Now, there are many different forms of fasting. Fasting, if you do it long term and you have a very short window where you're eating, that can potentially cause trouble with hormones. It can potentially actually decrease lean body mass, increase fat mass, and it can slow down your metabolism. So you have to be really careful with intermittent fasting and make sure you're getting your hormone levels checked. Make sure you're somehow checking up on your body fat percentage. This can be done with Dexa, with calipers. You can do measurements, pictures, and check in with yourself, see how you're feeling. As far as training fasted, if you're looking to lean down, perhaps you can do that. And I know a lot of people do enjoy training fasted. What I would recommend personally is to have at least have a little bit of protein before you train. So 20 to 25 grams of protein. There have been studies on that. I'm trying to think of her last, Abby Smith Ryan did a fantastic study on this, showing that having 20 to 25 grams of protein pre-workout is going to help you burn more calories throughout your workout, is going to boost your metabolism for the rest of the day, and it's going to help prevent catabolism, which is the breakdown of muscle mass. So what we're trying to do is, with intermittent fasting, obviously you want the anti-inflammatory benefits, you want autophagy benefits. There are a lot of cognitive benefits too to fasting, but for the sake of physique, there have to be some balances there, right? So figuring out that eating window that works best for you, trying to have that little bit of protein pre-workout to see if that helps, and understanding that if you go into your workout fasted, there is a better or a greater chance that you're going to lose muscle. So losing weight, a lot of people think about just wanting to lose weight, but to me, I want to think about that body composition. I know a lot of people want to think about body composition because you can lose weight, but if you're losing fat and muscle, your shape is not going to look the same as if you're really just primarily focusing on fat loss. And with that, really, really important to make sure you're increasing your protein intake, or at least having some protein before you train. Now, you don't have to have carbs before you train, and especially if you're on a low carb diet, protein is that macronutrient that we really want to focus on. And of course, post workout, there's no anabolic window per se, but you do want to make sure that you're taking in some protein, taking in carbs if you do have carbs in your diet, because this is going to replenish energy stores, and it's going to help with recovery, and it's going to really help you get ready for the next workout, and it's going to help with those gains. So hopefully that answers the question. The intermittent fasting thing is always a hot topic, and especially in the realm of fitness. And I will never say always do this or never do this, because again, it depends on the person. Now, postmenopausal ladies typically can do intermittent fasting a lot easier, because the hormone levels typically aren't as much of a concern. But we really do want to pay attention to lean body mass and your overall metabolic rate. We typically want to do things that are going to speed that up versus slowing it down. So let's see if I can get back to some of the questions. Hi, Stachelle. Thank you. WRW1 asks, how much can a woman with a small frame gain in a month? So this is going to depend a lot on your nutrition. It's going to depend a lot on how long you have been training. So if you haven't been training very long, you can experience what's called newbie gains. And in a month, you can put, I would say, up to a pound of muscle on, sometimes even more. Now, if you have been training for a while, you understand that there's a genetic ceiling, right? So you have to continue with progressive overload. You have to continue with methods of training that are new and incorporate different stimuli to the muscle. And with that, maybe you're looking at like a quarter pound per month, if that, and understand too that you got to be in a caloric surplus in order to gain that muscle. So I'm going to scroll up a little bit. Hopefully I don't flip the camera over. You would think after all the lives I do that I would know how to operate things, but here we are. Hello, Kevin. Hello, Katie. Katie asks, is there a way to build your upper quads only? My quads get too big, but I like the look of upper quads. Makes the stomach look flatter. So, Katie, when you're talking about upper quads, are you really talking about the thighs? Of course, the quads do go all the way up, but let me know if you're talking about the thighs, and something like your compound movements are going to be really helpful with that. Hip thrusts can be really helpful for putting on muscle in that upper upper quad area. But let me know, and of course you do want to avoid exercises like your leg extensions, because your leg extensions are more of an isolated move, and that can hit that quad sweep, can build the lower quads a little bit more. But you're really going to have to work on mind muscle connection, and really look to also incorporating some of those compound movements. Hack squats can be really excellent, and you're looking at your quad step ups can be good too. Alexa asks, hello, how's it going? Well, it's going pretty good, thanks. How are you? Alexa's got one question. Are you going to make a video about back delt exercise? Yes. So we will have a video on delts, rear delts, upper back coming out soon. Mara asks, can you increase body fat percentage by overtraining? So overtraining is a funny thing. And of course, this goes to diet too. Now, if you're eating in a caloric surplus, you can that's probably the best way to increase your body fat percentage is if you're in a caloric surplus and you're not really watching what you're eating. That being said, what you're probably experiencing is an increase in cortisol. So if you're overtraining, training is a stress. So training is going to spike cortisol levels. If you have other stressors in your life or you're not sleeping, that also increases stress. If you're not allowing your body time to recover, absolutely you're going to be putting on weight, but it's not necessarily going to be body fat. Again, everything goes back to nutrition. But if you're stressed out, you're 100% going to be holding water. And the thing with cortisol is that typically where we're going to hold water is the same place where we will be holding fat. So if you experience maybe you're holding something in the midsection, maybe you're holding lower back, or maybe in the thighs or the glutes, and it feels like fat, you're overtraining, your diet, let's say you're at caloric maintenance. So let's say that you're at a caloric maintenance, then I would say most likely it's water weight. And the secret to getting rid of that would be to rest and get some sleep. You can do things like go get out in the sun, infrared sauna, massage, sleep. Don't hit the gym. Because, you think about every time you go to the gym, again, it's going to spike that cortisol, increasing stress. But every time you wrap your hands around a bar or a dumbbell, you make a fist, this really spikes that fight or flight mechanism. So, it calls for some time off. And then you have to think too, with central nervous system, it takes about twice as long to recover as the muscles do. So if your muscles are sore, you're chronically sore, you have brain fog, maybe you have difficulty getting motivated, difficulty sleeping, you go to the gym, you pick up a dumbbell that should feel light, but it feels heavy. Those are pretty good symptoms of central nervous system fatigue. So, at that point, a good deload, you're looking at 5 to 7 days off, is going to be really effective. It's going to go a long way. If you're thinking that you're overtraining and perhaps you're only giving the gym 60 to 70% effort, if you take some time off, you come back, you're able to give yourself 100% effort. So your maximum effort again, and then your muscles become sensitized to training again. So you can actually decrease that volume, get better results, have shorter workouts, and you're able to push a lot harder. All right, so let's try to scroll up and see. I think someone asked if I take creatine, and yes, I do take creatine. I take it every single day, and I will probably continue taking it through my contests, which is something I've never tried to do, but I noticed that at a lower dose, so I'm taking 2 grams per day, that it will build up in your system, and I haven't experienced any kind of water retention. So I love creatine. Creatine monohydrate, still the gold standard. Now, if you're looking for standard dosing, it's 2.5 grams per 100 pounds. So you don't have to load, you don't have to get a fancy kind of creatine. You can just do, your regular creatine monohydrate. One thing to really keep in mind though, if you're taking your creatine pre-workout and you're taking caffeine, caffeine does hinder the absorption of creatine. So you want to make sure that you're taking that creatine post-workout away, about an hour away from that caffeine, so you can get the full absorption of it. Hello, Uphale. Oh, thank you so much for the kind words. Hello, Robin. Robin says, oh, thank you. She says, you're an inspiration. How important is the timeline for the lean phase? How does lack of sleep inhibit muscle repair? So leaning down is going to be an individual thing. And, if you're looking at gaining muscle, you are going to go into a clean bulk, which is kind of what we started the live with. So slight caloric surplus. That's it. 100 to 300 calories per day for females. For males, probably a little bit more, probably 200 to 400, but a very, very slight caloric surplus is going to put you into a state where you're able to gain muscle easily. And, you want to focus on having those carbs and protein as that surplus versus not having a surplus of fats. You absolutely do not want a surplus of dietary fats if you're looking to gain muscle. So, with gaining, you're looking at least 90 days. So you want to give your body time to build that muscle because it does take time. Your body puts out satellite cells. You will have intracellular swelling. The process is a slow one. But it's quick in the grand scheme of things. You just have to give yourself time. So after about 90 days, 120 days, then you can go into a mini cut, and that would be something like 4 to 6 weeks. This is going to help kind of clean things up, get rid of some of the excess body fat that you may have put on as you're putting on muscle. It's inevitable. You're going to put on a little bit of body fat as you gain. Now, if your goal is to just lean down, I do strongly suggest a stair-stepper type approach where you're dieting. Well, I guess it would be like like that. So you're leaning down for like 8 weeks, and then you're going to maintain for 4 weeks, and then you're going to lean down for 8 weeks, and you're going to maintain for 4 weeks. So rather than going through, let's say, 6 months of dieting, you're going to, oh, thank you, Ellie, so kind of you. So rather than going through like 6 months of dieting, you want to go through about 8 weeks of dieting and then take a bit of a break, bump your calories back up to maintenance, and go for about 4 weeks. What this is going to do is it's going to allow your body a bit of time to reach a new set point. It's going to give you a break from dieting, because if you've leaned down for a while, if you've been in a deficit for a while, you get diet fatigue. You're slower to recover. You can't train as hard. Things You just get hangry. And also, the metabolism can slow down with prolonged dieting. So, we want to try to fight that. And the best way to do that is to take that stair step approach where you're leaning down for a little bit and then you're maintaining for a little bit. Then you're leaning down and maintaining. And the process overall can take just a little bit longer. Not much longer though. And when you get to the end of it, when you reach where you want to be as far as level of leanness, mentally, physically, and metabolically, you're in a much better place. And then here's the thing, you're able to maintain that fat loss over time. Whereas if you've been dieting for 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, and we've all seen people who have made tremendous changes in their physique, and they've been in a caloric deficit for so long, but the issue is that they've been dieting for so long that their metabolism has slowed down. They've been restricting, so they've exerted willpower for such a long time that mentally, when they take the brakes off, it is a free for all. And typically when we come off of a diet, anyone who's done this for a long time, that the foods you crave, physiologically and psychologically, are the ones that you deemed off limits. And those are typically the ones that are high fat and high sugar. And that's a recipe for fat gain. And when your metabolism is low and you're taking in high fat, high sugar foods, the brakes have come off, then, typically people will put that fat right back on. And, a lot of times they'll gain weight and gain more than what they had before they started. So a more moderate approach, and understanding that the body loves homeostasis. The body just loves to be where it is right now. So and then also, as a woman, understand that if you're looking to do a competition or a shoot, or let's say you just want to get shredded, that the leaner you get, the harder it does become to get shredded. So take your time with it, incorporate those diet breaks, and really structure it to where you're not giving yourself free days, because that can really erase any kind of deficit that you had. And if you're taking things slowly and doing shorter windows of leaning down, the chances of going on a bender, a steak and shake bender, are much lower. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, let's see what we have for comments. And for some reason, it's not letting me scroll. So I might look over here. Faith, Love, and Hope says, I find it hard to gain muscle or lose weight since I have insulin resistance. How can I make it work for me? I want to gain muscle. Okay, so with insulin resistance, that can be a tough one. And, time restricted feeding can help quite a bit with that. So if you're able to shorten your window of time when you're eating, but don't make it so short to where you're doing like 4 hours a day, where you have a 4-hour eating window. So eat from, let's say, 7 o'clock in the morning until 7 o'clock at night, and that can really help. Also, making sure that when you're taking in carbs, that you're doing it where your body's going to be a little bit more insulin sensitive. So that post-workout window is that time where you really want to focus on taking in carbs. And then as your body adjusts, you can add more carbs in, but I would still rely more on those healthy fats and the proteins, except when it comes to around those training times. And that can be really helpful. Okay, let's see. Okay, here it goes. I don't know what I pressed. It's sometimes hard to do the chat on the phone. Okay, so Megan asks, posting again in case you didn't see, I did not see, is 30% fats in line with a clean surplus? No, that is going to be too high. If you're looking to be in a surplus, you want your fats to be as low as healthily possible. So, you can take your body weight and multiply it by about 0.2, and that's going to give you the essential amount of fat that you will need, because you don't want to drop below the essential amount of fats in your diet. But typically it can be like 15 to 20%. So you do want to try to keep your fats as low as possible. Now, if you're at 30% fats, doesn't give you a lot of room for the other macros, and you're most certainly going to be in an excess of dietary fat at that ratio. So again, it's about balance, it's about finding what works for you, but you do not want to enter into a caloric surplus with the intention of gaining muscle and then find out that you've gained 30% muscle and 70% fats, because that's going to make that leaning down process incredibly hard. And then it's also going to make the process of the clean bulk a little bit wasteful. So you want to make sure that everything is, as close to optimal with that. Hi, Imani. Thank you so much. Elhora says, can we have a quick biceps flex? Can you see my biceps? I really should lean it down just a little bit. It's just like the top of my head. Okay, so let's go back again. And hi, Aletha. Aletha says, I love your advice for that 8 weeks and how many calories it should take in. Absolutely. So when you think too, when you're making any kind of adjustments, it's really good to know what your maintenance calories are. Understand that as you're leaning down, maintenance calories are going to change, right? So you start at maintenance calories, and then when you go into a caloric deficit to lean down, make the adjustment of 10 to 15% decrease from maintenance calories. So when you do that, you're going to be in a deficit. One rule of thumb, one rule of thumb to make sure is that you are keeping your steps the same. You want to make sure you're keeping your activity level the same. I have this little guy, my little Fitbit, and it tracks my steps. I'm in a caloric deficit currently, and all I want to do is curl up into a ball and sleep. I don't want to move. But I make myself get 10,000 steps per day. This prevents me from having to do cardio. This also ensures that my metabolic rate and my calorie burn is going to be the same as it was when my calories were higher. Because typically, if you do that 10 to 15% reduction from maintenance calories, your body is so amazingly adaptive. It wants homeostasis. It wants to stay where it is. So you're going to go from being, if you're very active, you're going to go from being very active to moderately active. You'll find that it's a little bit more of a struggle to get yourself up and get yourself moving, but this is important. So figure out a way to track your steps, to track your movement, and make sure that everything is standardized so that when you do that caloric deficit, that everything else is the same. So Tracy says, do you ever use protein bars? She says she's a hairstylist, so not a lot of opportunities to sit and eat. If so, what do you recommend? Also, do you ever eat bread? If so, what kind? Okay, so I do not eat bread, and that is because I have a gliadin or a wheat allergy. So can't do that main protein in wheat. It gives me migraines. I wish I could do bread, but then part of me is kind of happy I don't. Protein bars, yes. So Quest bars, One bars, those are typically pretty good. And they're both under or around 200 calories. The bars are good if you have an option to do, let's say, a shake and rice cakes, or a shake and maybe a fruit cup, fresh fruit, not like the canned fruit cups. You don't want to do that, but for the same amount of calories, you can have a shake and an apple, and that'll give you about 200 calories. It's going to be more satiating, I think, but again, it's about convenience. So your protein bar is good. You could do a couple of eggs and maybe one of those 100 calorie packs of almonds if you wanted to do that. You could do Greek yogurt, some rice cakes. So tons of different options, but your shelf stable stuff, the protein bars, those always work. Tatiana asks, any exercises for banana rolls? So yes, reduce your overall body fat percentage. So, unfortunately, when we have those trouble areas, it's not something that exercise is going to fix necessarily. So I'll say, with the banana rolls, lean down. Lean down is the first and best thing you can do. And it's just going to give you an overall reduction in body fat percentage. So we can't specifically say, let's take some fat from that area, or let's take some fat from the back of the arms, or whatever area you think, and I know you guys are super critical on yourselves, because I'm the same way. Don't be so critical, but also understand that it's going to take a reduction in body fat percentage in order to reduce a problem area. That being said, you can build muscle if you have an area that, the skin maybe appears a bit more loose. Then you can build that area up. So for example, if you feel like, the back of the hamstrings maybe are an issue for you, then I would say work the hamstrings, build that muscle under the hamstrings, and also work towards leaning down, and that should give you a really nice look. And again, be patient, because changes do take time. Oh, Fan says she just ordered a balance pad to do leg curls with, as I suggested in the video, and she says thank you. Well, thank you, and understand, Fan, that balance pad is going to come in handy for so many different exercises. So you think about your kneeling squats, your kneeling hip thrusts. You can do them, of course, for the leg curls, but I use a balance pad for, I would say, almost every workout. I absolutely love it. I'll do it on the hack squat machine if I want to try to bring my lower body away from the pad just a little bit and hit my glutes a little bit differently. So balance pads are really excellent. He then asks, can you really stall fat loss if you undereat, meaning less calories than BMR? Yes, absolutely. So if you're chronically undereating, you can stall fat loss. And here's the thing too, like, we have to think about the law of thermodynamics, right? So if your calories in are less than what you're burning, then you are going to lose fat. So if you go to a country where there's not enough food, obviously you're going to see people that are very skinny because they're not eating enough to sustain. They're eating below their BMR. So we can't violate the laws of thermodynamics. That is what it is. That being said, your metabolism can and will slow down if you're eating in so much of a deficit that you're below your BMR for a period of time. And we talked a little bit before about cortisol. A lot of times you'll think that your results are stalled because your cortisol levels are high, and that is going to cause a lot of water retention. So a lot of times, if you're able to get those calories back up, you're able to rest, you're able to de-stress your body, then you'll find that you'll have kind of a flush of, fat loss very, very quickly. And that is just typically from the body relaxing and letting go of some of that water. Thank you so much, Rachel. You're so kind. SOS asks, do you eat all organic or not so concerned about that? So this is a really great question. And I think this is a question that it can be very individual. I do eat organic fruits and vegetables where I eat the peel. If you go to, I think it's EWG, they've got their Dirty Dozen list. So there are certain fruits and vegetables that are just not good to eat because they are typically higher in pesticides. So strawberries, for example, are one of those that you do want to buy organic. There are other foods like sweet potato, not as important to buy organic. So understanding and knowing which food sources are safer to buy not organic. And no, I do not buy all organic foods, but I do buy now grass-fed and pasture-raised meats. And that's just because the way that food is farmed and conventionally farmed is really not healthy for us. So again, this goes to personal preference, it goes to budget, but if you're thinking in terms of budget, that organic food is more expensive. I like to look at it as investing in health and paying things as I go versus hopefully avoiding getting sick from ingesting a lot of toxins. Yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Oh, thank you, Jam. And then let's try it. Thank you, Jason. Blessings to you too. I really appreciate that. So Chandra Mohan asks, any diet suggestions for belly fat reduction? So yes, if you're looking to reduce belly fat, CLA is still a good supplement for helping to reduce belly fat. That being said, look at your omega-3 versus your omega-6 fatty acid intake, and you might want to cut out seed oils and vegetable oils and focus a little bit more on your wild caught fish, your avocado, almonds, that type of thing. And looking to eat less than what you're burning. So being in a caloric deficit is going to really help with reducing belly fat. Also, going back to that cortisol, that our lovely friend cortisol, if you can reduce your stress, if you can get better sleep, then that is going to help with reducing the midsection. And then also avoiding potentially inflammatory foods without knowing your diet history or knowing the foods that you're sensitive to. It can be really helpful if you feel like it's a food related issue to go on what's called an elimination diet. There's one, it's called the AIP diet, and it's used a lot of times, it's autoimmune protocol diet, but it's used a lot of times to help people figure out what foods they're sensitive to. Because, understand that if you're taking in a food, let's say you're sensitive to eggs and you're eating eggs every single day, that can cause inflammation over time, and that can cause a stall, or it can hinder any results. And we're looking at it at kind of like a micro level, but it's really important to, of course, you want to think about training. You want to think about training hard, recovering well, eating the foods that agree with you, sleeping well, and having a mindset that is going to be conducive to getting the physique that you want to. So perception of stress is everything. Two people can experience the exact same thing, and one person can have a crazy reaction to it because of how they perceive the situation, and the other person can be totally fine. But understanding that the body it cannot comprehend the difference between events that are real or imagined. So if we put ourselves into a state of crisis, the body reacts accordingly, even though it's something intangible perhaps. So really, really important to focus on maintaining a good outlook and really adjusting your perspective and your perception of things. Hello, Nat. Nat says she just competed for the first time in April and she ended up winning first in Masters 45 plus. Awesome, congrats. And she says, you were my inspiration for staying all natural. Oh, thank you so much. She says, much respect from Houston. Oh, Nat, sending you hugs. Donna asks, when calculating macros by body weight, do you go by the body weight you want to be or the body weight that you are? So great question, Dawn. If you're looking to, let's say you're looking to lean down, I would estimate your goal body weight and I would go by that. And that's going to be helpful in, putting you in a caloric deficit, and it's, going to help with, kind of managing things. So, working on where you want to be, and then also understand that a bit of recomping can go on as you're, getting to that goal weight. And let's say you set that goal weight at 135 pounds, but you reach 140 pounds and you've got a tiny waist and you love the way your shoulders look and love the way your legs look, then, you're all set. And, understanding that the goal is leaning down, then we want to gradually increase those calories to get you out of that deficit. So before we talked about going into a deficit of a 10 to 15% reduction in overall calories, to go out of a deficit, you want to look to doing the opposite. So we want a 10 to 15% adjustment upwards. And then of course you're going to gauge your progress along the way, keep detailed food logs, and really make this into a scientific experiment, if you will, because the more information that you're able to collect, the better able you are to make adjustments on the way. Really, really important. I can't stress that enough. I've talked to a lot of people that want to make changes and, they don't know what they're eating, they don't know how they're training, and if we don't have that information, we basically have to start at square one. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you typically will lose a couple of weeks when you're trying to figure out where your, maintenance calories are. Hi, Kaninas. Hi, she says, hi from Greece. Thank you. Mai asks what to do when you're hungry and can't sleep. So if you're in a caloric deficit, this is going to happen. You're going to get hungry later on. You can look to adding perhaps a little bit of protein, to a snack after dinner. You can look to perhaps adjusting your meal timing to where you're eating a little bit closer to bed. Let's say you're eating 3 hours before bed. Maybe you bump it up to 2.5 hours. Maybe you look to adding a bit more fiber to that last meal. So adding that fiber can be helpful in slowing things down. Maybe you want to add a little bit of fats, and this is also going to slow things down. Looking to your protein sources. So are you having something at dinner like a white fish or a chicken breast, something like that? It can digest faster because there isn't any fat in it. So if you do eat meats, then something like a lean steak or maybe a wild caught fish or eggs, those can be really good choices for nighttime, because we want to think about slowing things down, and having some roasted veggies or some steamed veggies on the side, again, is going to add fiber, it's going to add volume. One thing to think about too is if you're not having carbs with that last meal, you can have a bit of carbs with that last meal without you around. So without adding calories to your diet, if you can spare, let's say 15 grams of carbs from somewhere else, add a little bit of carbs to that last meal. And what that's going to do is it will help boost your serotonin levels. This is going to help with sleep. Supplementation can also be helpful. So if you're not taking glutamine can help with this, and magnesium can be helpful too. Classy asks, how much protein and when is best to consume as a woman who wants to be lean and toned? So as a general rule of thumb, you're looking at about 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. So that spread out throughout the day is going to be helpful. And you want to think about your protein as kind of the foundation of your meal. And so every snack you have, make sure you have protein with it. So don't eat just an apple. You want to make sure that you're having an apple and, let's say, some chicken breast, or let's say you want to do some Greek yogurt, and making sure that you're having protein throughout the day, because the amino acids, we cannot store those. Our body just doesn't store protein. We can store carbs, we can easily store fats, and so we have to make sure that we've got a steady source, a steady stream of protein as we're going throughout the day. So, typically you're looking at 3 meals and a snack is kind of being a good starting point. 3 meals, 3 larger meals, that can be okay too, all the way up to about 6 meals. And then also, your macros are going to give you a bit of a boost as far as what's called the thermic effect of food. So carb ingestion will cause a slight bump in your metabolism. Fat ingestion, it doesn't do much, for increasing the thermic effect of food. Protein, on the other hand, if you want to spike your metabolism, each time you eat, you want to ingest that protein. And so that is going to help boost things. It's going to help with muscle maintenance. And, if you're following a high carb diet, you can drop down to about 0.8 grams of protein per pound of body weight. And then keep in mind too, if your goal is to lean down, that would be of your goal body weight. So it might seem like a big kind of daunting number at first, but it really isn't. It isn't that bad, especially if you're splitting it up into separate meals. And then if you're taking in a protein powder supplement once per day, that can go, give you about a fifth or a quarter of your protein intake. Hey, Kathy. Kathy says, you have a great workout for upper body. I was wondering if you have one routine to work out the whole lower body. Yes, absolutely. So check out the YouTube channel. There are tons of videos. Jennifer asks, how many calories per day? So again, that's going to be individual. If you're looking to maintain, a good rule of thumb would be goal weight times, this is for a woman, goal weight times about 13 to 15. So you're going to use that coefficient. Let's say you want to be 150 pounds. And let's say your metabolism is on the slower side. So maybe you would do 150 times 13. That would give you a pretty good estimate. You could also go on to bmrcalculator.net, I believe, calculate your BMR, and then you want to add calories to that. What I wouldn't do is I would not try to think about how many calories you're burning per day. So the total daily energy expenditure, that one's a tough one, right? Because we all think that we're extremely active, when in reality, if you're working a desk job, you're probably more sedentary. Even if you're training 6 days a week, I would be more on the moderate side, or conservative side as far as estimating what your caloric intake would be. But when you calculate that BMR, that is definitely the number that you do not want to dip below. Now, if you dip below it here and there, let's say you're doing calorie cycling and your BMR is 1,400 calories, and you have a day where you're at 1,350, one day per week or 2 days per week, and the other days are above your BMR, then typically you're okay. But you don't want to chronically eat below basal metabolic rate. And then please understand that when you're doing an estimate, this is just a starting point. It's really best to follow those macros, follow those calories that you have calculated for yourself for 2 weeks, right? Because that first week is going to be an adjustment period. If your goal is to lean down, you will probably drop a pound, 6 pounds. You just don't know what's going to happen. That second week, it'll be a good indication. Now, as far as leaning down, after that first week, you want to look to about a 1% decrease. 1% of your body weight decrease per week is a pretty safe range to be in to guarantee that it's fat loss and not fat and muscle loss. So if you see these crash diets where people are losing tons of weight each week, it's going to be water, it's going to be some fat, it's also going to be muscle too. And we mentioned before that the shape of your body is going to matter. If you're able to lose that body fat, but you're able to keep that hard work, that hard-earned muscle, you're going to be much more happy with that shape. So take your time with it, but also with those estimates, they're just estimates. So you really have to keep track and then make your adjustments from there. So let's say you calculate fat loss calories and you think you're in a caloric deficit, and after 2 weeks nothing has changed. Well, then that's probably maintenance calories, and that you will have to decrease by about 10 to 15% of those calories in order to put yourself in a deficit. And then keep those steps up, keep moving. Jason says, just from the few minutes I've been here, all of this sounds so informative. Oh, thank you. Try to. So always learning and, trying to learn about the science, but understanding that, gosh, a lot of these studies, they're not done on trained subjects, or they're done on mice. So we have to look at real world research. We have to take some of these meta-analyses and digest them, and then try to figure out what works for us specifically, because you have a protocol that might work for, let's say, 50% of the population, but maybe you're an outlier in some way, shape, or form. So it's important to understand the science, understand that there's a bit of art to it too, and then understand as an individual that you can try something and it might not work. But I do recommend trying different eating styles, trying different things and seeing how you feel. Susan asks, what are your feelings on fake meat? So I'm not a fan of those. And a lot of times when we're eating, we're trying to get away from highly processed foods. And the fake meats, they look like meat. I know they cook up like meat, but it's a lot of times they're high in cellulose, they're high in the vegetable oils, the seed oils, so they're a bit more inflammatory. Nutritionally speaking, they don't have the nutritional value that some of these the other vegan sources of protein can have. So I would rely more heavily on, someone says just like fake news. Yeah. So, I think for the novelty of it, it could be fun. But for me, I like to keep things simple, and there are really great vegan sources of protein. And as a vegan, you have to really pay attention to your leucine content. And that's the one thing that supplementation can help with. So if you're not doing essential amino acids and you're vegan, you might want to consider supplementing. And I think that supplements should be just that. It should be to supplement an already healthy diet. But if your goal is to gain muscle or change body composition, and you're plant-based, just plant-based, it can be hard to do that. So make sure that you've got an amino acid profile that's high in that leucine. If it's not, supplement with your essential aminos. Don't be afraid to do one protein shake per day, if that's your thing. If not, really try to get as much from whole food sources as possible. William asks, if you're building muscle mass and you have to choose one, would you go for creatine or branched chain amino acids? Creatine, 100%. So your branched chain aminos, again, if you're vegan, they can be really helpful, but I prefer essential amino acids over branched chains, because essentials are going to give you the 9 essential amino acids that your body can't make. So why would you supplement with just 3 when you can supplement with 9? But creatine's the gold standard for building muscle. And also know that if you're getting enough protein in your diet, you're not going to need the branched chains. You just aren't, unless you like how they taste. But if you're taking in enough protein, then you pile on the branched chains. It can be a conflict. So your body can have trouble absorbing, especially if you're just eating a whole food diet. So I would keep it simple. Do the creatine. It's scientifically proven. And just eat protein from whole food sources. Do a protein shake if that's your jam. If not, then focus on getting enough through whole food sources. So I saw something about a Dexa. Kristen says, recently got a Dexa scan, so informative. How accurate is their resting metabolic rate estimate? Okay, so the thing with Dexa, it is one of the more accurate scans that we can do for body fat percentage. Hopefully you did it fasted first thing in the morning, without any caffeine. If that's the case, your Dexa scan is going to be accurate. Now, for the resting metabolic rate, those are typically accurate too. Now, I'm assuming that you didn't train, you didn't have caffeine, you were fasted, and you were sitting there for, it's about 10 minutes just kind of breathing in a tube. And those are pretty accurate. So that's a good thing. If you did it later in the day, again, if you've already eaten, if you've already trained, then it may not be as accurate. But a lot of times they are. And keep in mind, metabolism is elastic. So you can get your resting metabolic rate done. Let's say you're dieting, you go back into the off season, you're able to eat more, you're training harder, then you can boost that resting metabolic rate, absolutely. So Kristen said, yes, fasted, etc. Perfect. Yeah. Then you can, you can rely on the RMR and know that it's pretty accurate. And Anna asks, how accurate is the Dexa scan? It's going to depend. It's going to depend from machine to machine. It will depend on how it's calibrated. Also depends on if they measure from here down. If they take into account the brain, the brain's a lot of fat, and that can raise your body fat percentage. So I would say if you have the ability to stick with the same provider, the same machine, then it's going to give you fairly accurate results over time. But if you're kind of bouncing around from place to place, the machines are calibrated differently, so it may not be that accurate. And Christina asks, how do you get a Dexa scan? So what I would do is, if you have a sports performance lab, or if you have your local college, you can call your local college if they have like a sports performance or exercise physiology division, and they may do it. And if they do it, they're going to do it at a discounted rate. I've had luck on Groupon with Dexa scans, and you could Google also Dexa scan in my area. Some doctor's offices will do it too. Charlene asks, vitamin C and vitamin D, should they be added when in a deficit? Okay, so vitamin C you can add. I would suggest the liposomal vitamin C. Don't go overboard on it. Many of the supplements are crazy, crazy high. And your liposomal vitamin C, that's going to help your body to absorb it over time versus like the fizzy, because I was doing the fizzy drinks and I was getting like 1,000 milligrams at a time. That vitamin C has a half-life of about 6 hours, so you're gonna have to keep doing it. High intake of vitamin C can cause issues over time, so you want to be careful. You want vitamin C, absolutely, but you want to make sure you're not getting too much. Vitamin D, let's talk about that, because about, I think the latest study, about 70% of the US population is deficient in vitamin D. And understand that this is not just a vitamin, it's a hormone. So this controls a lot of our body processes. This controls, it helps with hair, skin, and nails. It helps with bone health. A lot of processes rely on that vitamin D. So really important that I think you got to get your levels tested to make sure you're deficient. Understand that as we get older, we're less able to assimilate and utilize vitamin D, so we're just less likely to get it from the sun. Also understand that if you have more melanin in your skin, so if your skin is darker, you're not able to get as much vitamin D because your skin was made to be out in the sun more and protect your body from the sun. So darker skin, if you're older, if you're not outside, you're most likely not getting that vitamin D. And a lot of times people can have trouble just converting that sunlight into vitamin D. Supplementing, again, get blood work, make sure that you are on the low side, but supplementing with vitamin D3 can be very, very helpful. Now, when you supplement with your D3, you want to make sure that you're also taking it with K2, because D3 is going to help to release calcium into your system, can help to circulate calcium. K2 is going to ensure that that calcium is deposited into your bones and not into your arteries. So that combo of that D3, K2, great for immunity, great for recovery, great for a ton of body processes. So really, really love it. And Susan asks, what brand of supplements do you recommend? There are quite a few. I do like Pure encapsulations. Thorn is really good. Now is good. Life Extension is good. So, you do have a lot of good choices. Typically if you don't choose some of those supplements, you want to look for a brand that is third-party certified or, certified safe for sport, somehow third-party certified, and or sold by a doctor. That can be really helpful too. Okay, so we'll take a couple more questions. Let's see, I'm gonna scroll up. Cindy asks, tips on hormonal imbalance after a show. So Cindy, you want to make sure that you're getting enough healthy fats. You want to make sure that you're resting and allowing your body to get back to normal. And also understanding that after a show, a lot of people like to do that reverse diet. For me personally, I think it's important to get your body fat up to a healthy level as quickly as possible. So, really just getting that body composition to where it needs to be. Thank you, SOS. And that, that's going to go a long way. Make sure you're resting, make sure your stress is good. And it's just going to take time. Hey, Erin, thank you. Okay, so one more question. Thank you, Christina. And let's see. Hi, Upcycle Outdoorsman. Good to see you. I'm going to scroll way up because I think I missed quite a few questions. Elisa asks, is it possible to gain muscles without gaining fat? So when we talked a little bit before about having that slight caloric surplus and having the surplus be in the form of carbs and protein, really important that you don't go over on fats. This is going to help you build lean mass. You want to look to things like macronutrient timing too. So you want to make sure that your carb intake is highest both before your workout and after your workout. Now, if it's something where you're training first thing in the morning, get your protein. Get that 20 to 25 grams of protein about 30 minutes before you or right before you train. Just get that bolus of protein before you train if it's first thing in the morning. And then have your post-workout meal and the meal after that be the highest carb meals. Now, if you train a little bit later in the day or after breakfast, have a good breakfast, good amount of protein, high carbs, and then train, and then have a protein shake and a good amount of carbs post-workout, or have a meal with that's rich in protein, low in fats, and high in carbs. And that's going to help go a long way to quickly replenishing your energy stores. So we have to think about, when you're looking to gain muscle, we have to think about, or even maintaining, you want to think about the timing of the nutrients and not having fats around workouts. Unless you're low carb or unless you're keto, then that's totally necessary. But if you're not, you want to think about quicker meals around that pre and post workout, and then having your fats later on when you need a little bit more satiety, slowing things down a bit, because it's quick energy before you work out, post workout, quick to replenish the energy stores. It's going to help with recovery. It's going to help with muscle maintenance. Now back to the original question is, are you going to gain fat when you go into a lean bulk? Yes, you're going to gain a little bit. This is just inevitable when you're in a surplus. However, keep track of your progress, right? So if your goal is to gain shoulders and let's say gain quads, and typically when you go into like a clean bulk, it's good to have just one or two muscle groups that you're really, really focusing on. And that way you can stack that volume for those muscle groups. So you want to keep measurements. So if you want to gain on your shoulders, let's say shoulders go up a half an inch in your measurements after a month, and the waist has gone up a quarter of an inch. This is fine. But let's say you're doing a bulk and your shoulders have gone up a half an inch and your waist has gone up an inch. That's an indication that we probably need to slow things down just a little bit. So rein back on that caloric intake. Want to keep an eye on the waist and make sure that you're not gaining as much there as you are in other places. And this can help ensure that the weight that you're putting on is mostly muscle. And then if you're looking for that lean bulk, you're looking on average of about 0.5% of your body weight per week too. So if you're stepping on the scale, Santa bod, yes, you don't want that waistline to expand more than everything else. And just keeping track of your measurements is important. And again, if that waistline starts getting out of control and everything else isn't growing as quickly, then you want to rein back on that caloric intake, and you can manage it to where you don't put on as much fat. But again, if you're in a surplus, it's inevitable. You can recomp, absolutely. So that is muscle building and fat loss simultaneously. And this is typically done at around maintenance calories. It takes longer though. So, if you're someone who's afraid of putting on fat and you've got all the time in the world, you can absolutely recomp. It's just going to take longer. And then that macronutrient timing that we talked about is really, really important. Fuel those muscles, fuel yourself for recovery, and making sure you're getting in your macros throughout the day. Susan asks, what's your skincare? Oh, thank you. I love tretinoin. I'm obsessed with tretinoin. And I recently went and did a radio frequency microneedling. It's called Scarlet. If you're in Tampa, check out Zen Life MD. Dr. Kareem over there is a doll. I absolutely love her. So I do microneedling. Love it. Light lasers, light peels, and tretinoin. Tretinoin is really great for anti-aging. So Tracy says, do you need a BFF? I'll trade my hair services for your bodybuilding knowledge. Yes, Tracy. I do need a BFF. It's hard to find bodybuilding buddies for sure. So, if you have a hard time making friends, or if you're fitness, then then you know that it can be hard having buddies that train. So absolutely. And if you can't find it locally, join some groups. If you're on Facebook or other social media, surround yourself with people going in that same direction who are going to support you. Upcycle outdoors and awesome. Well, that is it for this time. Thank you so much for the excellent questions, for chatting with me, and for spending your Thursday. Thank you for spending your Thursday afternoon with me. I love you all. We're going to have some new videos coming out next week. And yeah, if there's anything that you want to see, let me know in the comments and we will make it happen. So again, I love you guys. Keep up the amazing work and thank you for hanging out with me. Train hard, y'all. Thanks, Anutush. I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.